I was born on April Fool's Day, the 1st of April 1932. My mother's name was Mary Ann Dodds. They say that I was a twin and she'd lost the other child, and I think she clung to me because she was frightened she'd lose me. She was always very loving, and she never had any more children. I never minded, I never missed other children. I was a happy child, probably very spoiled because I got all the attention. I have a cousin called Desmond Foster White. His mother was Mum's older sister, Margaret White.
I was born in Weston, that's on the coalfields, Curry, Weston, Cessnock area. I used to see Pat from time to time. I remember when she was born, a mother visited our place in Weston, and Pat stayed there with us for quite a while, and I was warned to keep away from her, but I was fascinated always, and I thought she was just beautiful.
My father's name was Alistair Russell Hayes. He was a bookmaker's clerk, but he was a gambler. And even when he got paid, he would gamble that money, and many, many times he came home with no money at all. So Mum always had to work to pay the rent. She said it was like he'd back two flies crawling up the wall. And unfortunately, while Mum was living at Mum on Point, he was living with a woman in the Tivoli Hotel. So she divorced him when I was 5. My mother was a very, very hard-working, lovely, happy-natured person. Her first job was a nurse at Stockton Mental Hospital, and she had to leave when she was 17. She had a nervous breakdown. Then she got a job on Newcastle Station in the cafeteria. And because she was such a good worker, they gave her a cigarette kiosk on Central Station, and she used to remember all the cigarettes that the different customers liked and have them ready to give them. Now, she worked hard all her life. I loved her. She was a very kind-hearted, generous person, happy and funny, and loved to tell jokes. And of course, working in the hotel, she learned a lot of jokes from the drinkers, and she could tell a good joke.
To describe the atmosphere of the coalfields in those early days, it is to be remembered that the mines employed probably 85 or 90% of everyone that had employment. The district had emerged from the days of the Great Depression. Coal was in great demand, and there was money about. The hotels, for instance, was a gauge of what the atmosphere was like. The hotel had a slate, as they called it, so they'd have beer on credit. And the good drinkers had big amounts to pay on Pay Friday, which took place every second Friday. It was not unusual for some women to be there wanting or trying to get money from their husbands to pay accounts before the serious drinking began.
My mother met my stepfather at a ball with other friends, and they started to keep company, and he kept on asking her to marry him. He was 32 and she was 35 when they married. We went over by train. Western Australia was a lovely place. We lived at Fremantle. I didn't get along with my stepfather. I resented him, and he used to try and boss me around, and I said to him, "You're not going to tell me what to do, you're not my father." So after that, he sort of withdrew somewhat. I was rather bright at school. I think I came 4th in the class at boarding school, which was a good grounding. And when we went to West Australia to Beaconsfield, and they said, "We'll put her into 5B, and if she can't keep up, she'll have to go back to 4th class." Anyway, I came top of 5B that year. And I remember Mum gave me a book called Listen Again, Children, for coming top of 5B, and in the front of it she wrote, "To dear Patty for coming top of 5B. Then Uncle Fred asked Mum, would I go and work in his office? So I was working from the age of about 15 and a half. So I worked for him for 18 months. Then I worked at the restaurant for 18 months. I loved it. I loved being independent. I loved getting the wages. My mother was a great influence on me, the willingness to succeed and to be self-sufficient and independent, not rely on others, you know, to stand on your own 2 feet, and which I did. Well, Mum had always wanted to do modelling and her mother wouldn't let her. So there was this lady called Dolores and she had a modelling agency in Perth. So I would go up of a Monday night to take modelling lessons, and I modelled Jansen swimsuits and for Bones department store in Perth. And we modelled at balls. I remember to the Perth Trotting Club ball, and we modelled swimsuits. And then I won a prize for Miss Labour Day when I was 17, and I got a canteen of cutlery. And yes, it was quite fun.
I kicked footballs around that Western football ground for years as a kid, and I played school football, was good at it, loved it. After I came home from spending the last 18 months of World War II in New Guinea in the Air Force, there was a space in that team for me. I must have just devoured it and played very well, and we won a premiership that year. I met Daryl, and he was an Abermain boy. Daryl was very well known and well liked as a young man. I know that for a fact. You couldn't help but like him. And from the time that we played in opposing teams in 1946, that evening we had drinks together. You know how with some people you can argue the point on matters. He didn't want to argue with anybody on any matters. Off the field, we were inseparable from that time onwards. Until my brother was offered a coaching position in Townsville in the year of 1947 and was asked to bring a player of some quality, and he invited me, which surprised me, and I thank him for it because it opened a part of my life that I have loved all my life, and that is my love of North Queensland. The year after the year that we spent in Townsville, I was invited to do the same job in Townsville the same year, the very next year, that's 1948. And Daryl and I were inseparable by this stage, and I forget whether I was invited to bring a player or if I asked I could bring another player. But anyway, it seemed just natural for Daryl and I to go. And we were welcomed with open arms, and right from day one, Daryl made friends and excelled. He played on the wing. He never got hurt, never made a mistake, never dropped a pass. He was terribly hard to tackle, and he was first man selected in the Townsville representative side for that year, as I was also. And we had a wonderful year of 1948 in Townsville and won another premiership. Townsville was a great place. We never had previously had experience with barrier reef fishing or trapping mud crabs or catching barramundi. How good would this be for Abermain kids? And Magnetic Island. Wonderful place. There was a weekly dance on the island, so a crowded ferry would go to the island, but the dances were beautiful. Old-time dances in those days, great music, and the girls went over on plenty girls. Can't describe how good it was. Oh, we were singers. We loved to sing. We sang in the pubs on the coalfields, and we sang up there. We thought we were pretty good, but we harmonised somewhat. We had no musical background or no musical accompaniment, but we were asked to sing wherever we went, and we loved it.
I love dancing, and when I got to be 17, I started to go dancing, and I'd go Friday night, Saturday night, Wednesday night. I loved the jazz waltz. I didn't like old time dances much. I loved the jazz waltz and the foxtrot and ballroom dancing. And there was one boy I remember called Billy Anderson. He was a very good dancer. He used to dance with me a lot. The boy that I was very fond of was called Ross Craig, but he didn't dance, but he would come to the dances, and I thought he was just lovely. But he was 2 years older than me, and he said he wasn't going to get married till he was 30. And that's one of the reasons why I came over here when I was 19 and a half. I thought perhaps absence might make the heart grow fonder, and he might miss me.
I headed for the coal mine again, and I was invited by Tom Moncrief, and he invited me to be a partner with him in a trucking business that was for sale, general carrying business, Newcastle to Cessnock and points in between, and it seemed an opportunity for me, so I accepted the invitation. During that time, by the way, Darryl, I feel sure, was in Manly. He got the opportunity, the invitation to go and play or try with Manly. Just several months after we started, Tom Moncrief sustained a back injury, and he was advised that he should give away the carrying. About this time, coincidentally, Darryl, I think, had given up trying with Manly, and I invited him to be in the carrier, and he jumped at the chance because that seemed to be for him, because we both wanted to be truck drivers. There was a place in Curry that we'd deliver to a clothing factory there, and 10 girls had come out, see if they could get a smile or have a bit of a laugh with us or something like that, you know. Great days, long days, long days. I broke an arm playing rugby league while I was, so that interrupted with things quite considerably. On a Saturday, we played football on the Saturday. On Monday, I found that I couldn't work so well with my arm in plaster, so I cut 4 inches off the bottom of the plaster and 4 inches off the top of the plaster, and that was better because the work was able to be continued. The only thing is that 6 weeks later, when I found that the bone wasn't knitting, I had to have it in plaster again. Anyway, it was all worthwhile because the general carrying became beer carrying, and it was permanent. There was an air of permanence about it because, you know, there was nothing more important than carrying beer.
Bill and Mary bought this war service home, and he put Venetian blinds on every room in that house except my bedroom. And I said to Mum, Bill doesn't want me to live in that house. She said, don't be silly. So that's when I got offended and decided to book a passage and come to Sydney to work. And as I said, this boy I was fond of, I thought I've got 11 years from 19 to 30 to travel around and work, and then I'd go back and settle down. Being 19, Mum didn't want her daughter living in Sydney on her own, so that's why she arranged for my auntie to take me there.
Pat came to stay with my mother and father.
And when I came over here, I was quite looking forward to seeing Des and coming back to Curry. Des and Darryl were driving the other way in the beer run. Des pulled up in the truck and they got out, and Darryl stood by the truck, and then he brought him over to meet me, and I just said hello, was more interested in Des. So I didn't take too much notice of Darryl. He was nice looking, he had red hair when he was younger and curly hair. He quite looked like Mickey Rooney. Anyway, a few days later I was doing Uncle Noel's books sitting on the kitchen table, and he came in and said, can I use the telephone? And the telephone was on the wall just around the corner from the kitchen door, and I heard him ring the bell and said, what are you doing tonight? And I thought, the cheek of you coming in here to ring up a girl. I thought, how rude. And he put his head around the corner. He said, I'm talking to you. He said, what are you doing tonight? And I said, nothing. Why? He said, would you like to go to the pictures? And I said, all right, thank you. So he came to pick me up and we went to King's Theatre. And I remember Carmen Miranda was starring in Rio Rita. And he whispered, would you like to go for a drive? And I'd never left a picture halfway through it in my life. I said, oh, all right, if you want to. So we went for a drive to Maitland, and Auntie Peg had loaned Daryl the new Jaguar to take me to the pictures. And unbeknownst to me, she said, if you ask Patty to go to the pictures with you, I'll give you the Jaguar. So he was more interested in driving the Jaguar actually than he was taking me out. Anyway, we went out quite a few times after that.
There was immediately a bond and chemistry there between Daryl and Pat, and from that point they were a couple. Well, I should explain that I met Margaret in hospital when I was having a hernia operation. She was training to be a nurse.
He met this lovely nurse called Sister Margaret James, and they said he pursued her up and down the hall in his wheelchair.
And that's when Margaret and I got together. Can you imagine the excitement in the nurses' quarters when I arrive every day in the white Mark V Jaguar with the red velvet interior? Oh, that was pretty good.
And Daryl and I would go out as a foursome with Des and Margaret.
I was intent on having a change in my life. And Daryl and I had decided that we'd like to get back to Queensland or go somewhere. But the business was good and looking good and couldn't fail.
Daryl met me this Friday night and said, let's get married and go to Darwin. I said, you go, I won't go. I said, what are you going to do about the business? He said, oh, I don't know, Des will think of something. And I said, you go. He said, no, I won't go without you. And I said, well, if you're not going to go, why don't you buy Des out and stay here and run it? He said, I will if you'll marry me and help me run it. So that was the proposal. So we married at 6 o'clock on Saturday the 20th of December 1952. I started working in the business and we bought a big new Scammell truck and painted on the headboard, Smiths for Service. What I really loved was the friendship with the clients, with the customers.
It went like a smoothly oiled piece of machinery. Daryl he operated the truck side of it perfectly, and Pat was absolutely exemplary and very, very particular with the way that the books were prepared and the office was run, and the relationship she had personally with every one of their customers. I've never known of a better business run and conducted with so successfully as it was under Daryl and Pat.
Before the random breathalyzer tests came in, every hotel would give him a free beer, and if you had 17 customers, he'd have 17 schooners. I never saw him drunk. The only time I ever saw him drunk was he went to a police charity golf day, and he got so drunk, he ran into a lady's fence coming home at Aberdare, and he had to go and fix the fence. I consider our greatest achievement was surviving the business and keeping all our customers, despite all the attempts to take it away. All Trans were going to take it off us, and the manager of Chewy's Brew got us down there one day to say after the long weekend in October, All Trans will be taking over the business. And they said, don't get in touch with the customers. And I said to Daryl, I've got to let them know. And I rang them all up and I said, look, All Trans is going to take over your carrying. And they all stayed with us, and they all rang the brewery and told the manager that they did not want to lose us. And he rang on the Monday afternoon and said, you want to tell Daryl he should stand for Parliament. He's so highly thought of. He said, all of your customers and all of the office staff do not want this to happen. Daryl and I worked in the business together for 38 years. We got an award at Australia Day this last January the 26th in recognition to the service to the carrying industry in the Cessnock local government area. Anyway, Bob Simpson shook my hand and he said the red beer trucks were an icon in Abermain and put Abermain on the map. We were married 18 months and I lost my first baby, and I said to the doctor, "When can I have another baby, doctor?" And he said, "Wait 9 months, Pat." And then I had Stephen, and he was born on the 17th of December 1955. Jeffrey was born on the 15th of April 1959, and Graham was born on the 3rd of December 1962. Being a mother was a very happy time for me. Daryl was a wonderful father, and we took a lot of photos of the children. Looking back, being a mother and working was quite a challenge, but I think we rose to the occasion. I thought I had a regret not having a daughter. I always wanted 2 girls or a boy and a girl. Having reared the children, I don't miss not having a girl. The boys have been great.
Margaret felt she was coming into labour at 5 o'clock one morning. This was with our first child. She said, she woke me up, says, "I think I need to go to hospital." And I said, "Just take it easy. Just go back to sleep for a little while and I'll drop you there on my way to work." I was working at the fish board. So she did. She went back to sleep for about 45 minutes, says, "We better go, forget breakfast." And so I took her on the way to work and rang up at Smoko, and she'd had a little boy. No, a little girl. That was our first, yeah. We had a second girl then, Pauline, and then the third one was a boy, and the last one was all good kids. Lost the boy, sadly, but can't help that. He had a shoulder operation about the same year I lost Margaret in 2009. He died 3 months after Margaret, and the only good out of that was that I didn't have to share losing him with Margaret.
Well, while we had the business, we never went on holidays, apart from going to the bay. We could never leave the business to be away from it, with me ringing the orders, so we only spent the weekends or a long weekend or Easter at the bay, and we'd take the children down to Shoal Bay Beach, and Stephen was always annoying Jeffrey and fighting with him. But one day this boy started to throw sand in Jeffrey's face, and Stephen flew at him like a fox terrier.
Both Pat and Daryl and Margaret and I were always keen on getting to Sydney. Pat had a love for the city. There's no doubt about that. Daryl and I equally loved the city, largely because of our love for Chinese food.
Well, in 1975, Bruce Turnbull, the father of Malcolm Turnbull, he was a hotel broker in Sydney in Double Bay, and he told Des about this flat, and Des went and had a look at it and was thinking about buying it, and Daryl and I went and sat outside, and I thought, oh, I'd give my right arm to have this flat. Anyway, I said to Des, "You going to buy it?" He says, "No." He said, "It's a millstone around my neck." He said, "I'm not going to buy it." So we decided to buy it together. We had that flat for 28 years.
We were very keen supporters of the rugby league scene. We both applied for Sydney Cricket Ground membership, and the membership didn't come through for close to 20 years, about 20 years later. So in 1974 we got Sydney Cricket Ground membership. So we had membership for the cricket in the summer, and the rugby league in the winter. Pat, bless her, had to be the first at the football matches to pick the very best seats that she wanted. Which means we were at a football match at 10 o'clock. But it's all right, we had the Sunday papers and the coffee shop was good.
Margaret and I were very good friends. She was like a sister to me, and we went to the operas together, and Daryl and Des would go to Garden Island or roam around the rocks or go out to the football stadium. So we did everything together.
I made friends as quick as possible with the owner of the best Chinese restaurant in Sydney at that time. And I remember one time going there on a busy night when there was a queue of 50 people, when Michael Louis put his hand up like that to me, and we're at the end of the queue, put his hand like that, and the four of us walked past 50 people. Entree. I've lived such a fortunate life, and that's a big part of it. The relationship with Daryl and Pat, they were great times, wonderful times. I don't know anyone that's had a life as fortunate as mine.
Des and I are still friends and see each other quite often. We have a great affinity. We were married 61 and a half years when he died. Oh, I was lost. He was a very happy-natured fellow. I never saw him get angry. He never raised his voice. He was willing to work. He was hard-working.
My life is just full of happy memories of friendships. But I'm 90. The law of averages is working hard as possible against me at the moment. That's what's going to beat me, the law of averages. Look, I'm not the type of person, I can become emotional about things just as much or more than most, but I truthfully believe that when the joy of life is gone, you should be gone with it.
I've got two beautiful daughter-in-laws. Grandkids are just lovely. What I'd like to say to the grandchildren is what I've told my own children, is if you're always honest and keep your good name, you cannot, once you lose your good name, you've lost everything. Money doesn't mean a thing if you lose your good name. And the lesson in life I've learned, and which I've tried to teach my children, is be truthful, honest and diligent in everything you do. The greatest achievement in my life is my family. My sons, my daughter-in-laws, my grandchildren and my two great-grandchildren. So after I'm gone, they will live on and hopefully enjoy looking at this video and thinking she wasn't such a bad old girl after all.